Hi, everyone, and welcome to this very important discussion, part of our Bloomberg Equality Summit. Now, 2020 has seen more women rise to prominence, taking up high-profile public roles in both global but also European finance institutions. But this trend needs to be maintained into 2021 and, of course, far beyond. Now, it has been more critical than ever for financial sector companies to demonstrate a real commitment this time to addressing gender inequality, to retain and promote women in the workforce. Now, to mark International Women's Day, Bloomberg is hosting this event today, and I could not be more happy for the lineup of guests that we have. Now, first of all, we'll discuss, of course, how flagship initiatives and concrete actions can leverage the role of women in finance with leading EU policymakers and key industry players and experts. Now, just a couple of housekeeping rules, or housekeeping points, I should say. Before we start, please do refresh your browser if you're having any issue with sound or video. You can actually open also an event chat box in the bottom right corner if you need any support at any time. For real-time transcript of the event, you can also click on the link in the session description. Please ask questions. This is what I'm here for, to facilitate discussion, so feel free to send me any questions you have through the Q&A box. And finally, please do feel free to use social media and use the hashtag Bloomberg Equality to join into the conversation. Now, first, let me get straight to Peter Grauer, chairman of Bloomberg LP, top executive on the Heroes Women Role Models list 2020, and of course, founder of the US 30% Club, and Anna Patricia Butin, executive chair of Santander Group and the president of the European Banking Federation.
Hello, everyone. I'm Peter Grauer, the chairman of Bloomberg, and I am delighted to welcome everyone here today. And although we can't be together in person, an event like this reminds us of what connects us and the values we share, even at a distance. 2020 is shaping up to be the decade where we are seeing more women appointed to high-profile public roles in global and European finance institutions. This highlights not only the importance, but also the value of increasing women's leadership and presence in both the public and the corporate finance world. At Bloomberg, we believe that standardized disclosure of gender-related data can drive forward progress in promoting women in a fast-changing business world. This is why 6 years ago, we launched the Bloomberg Gender Equality Index, or the GEI. By publicly releasing detailed, consistent, and comparable gender-related data, the companies included in the Bloomberg Gender Equality Index are setting a new standard for data reporting. Disclosure and reporting helps companies attract capital and talent while empowering investors to make investment decisions through a social lens, and enables employees and communities to hold companies accountable for progress. And as more companies have come to recognize the business case for fostering an inclusive environment, the GEI has grown year on year. This year's index is larger than ever. 380 global companies spanning 11 sectors, headquartered across 44 countries and regions, have taken part. This includes 129 companies headquartered across 19 countries in Europe. Not only are more global companies disclosing data than ever before, but the quality of disclosure continues to improve. For example, GEI companies had a 94% disclosure score on average. However, European companies went further with a 96% rate. And although we raised the threshold for inclusion in the 2021 index, we are still seeing record numbers of companies disclosing data. The past 12 months have been hard on everyone, and increasingly we are seeing that the S in environmental, social, and governance data has become more important to companies than ever before. Firms that provide an inclusive environment supporting work-life balance and flexible work arrangements will eventually succeed in retaining a talented workforce and gain a competitive advantage in a business environment that has been significantly altered by COVID-19, possibly forever. I want to close by thanking companies participating to the GEI and to those joining today's panel for their commitment to solving the important issue of gender equality by disclosing data on their efforts to support gender equality through policy development, representation, and transparency. These efforts are creating accountability within their industries, collectively driving real change. I'm looking forward to hearing from our speakers, and I'm particularly delighted to be joined by Anna Botín, who has just been elected as the first woman president of the European Banking Federation, and Irene Tignale, chief of the Economic and Monetary Affairs Committee in the European Parliament, two leading women who are sharing European finance.
Thank you so much, Peter. It's really great to be with you today, and great to be able to open the summit for such an important topic that we celebrate every year in March, which is marking Women's History Month, to take stock of how we have made progress, but of course, how much more we still have to do. And this year is a year unlike any other. We have had to deal with COVID-19, one of the most challenging events ever in our lifetimes. It has, of course, taken a very personal toll on millions of people and families around the world. We have lost loved ones and friends, and we will have lasting social and economic consequences, which we still don't understand, and of course, with implications for gender equality. And what we do know is that the economic impact of the pandemic has fallen disproportionately on women's shoulders. For the first time in history, for example, the economic downturn in the US, we're seeing unemployment and income losses affecting women more than men. Many essential frontline workers, those that are caring and supporting us all, are women. In Europe, more than 75% of health and social care workers are women. And of course, women are also assuming most of the burden of care in the home, almost twice the level of men in childcare and housework on average. And we have plenty of research that suggests that because of the pandemic, as 1 in 4 women have considered scaling back their careers, even leaving work altogether. So this is a call to continue to work as hard as we can to make sure that this critical work is done in dignity and security. And of course that the contribution, often unremunerated, of women is honored and recognized. We cannot afford to lose the female energy and talent in our economies or companies, and we must not allow COVID-19 to erode the progress that we've made. And to do that, as we look to rebuild after the pandemic, we must place the need to address this inequality at the forefront of our thinking. And on this, of course, business has a very important role to play. Yes, we need to lead by example, how we support our teams and customers, and not only because it is the right thing to do, but we have plenty of evidence that a more diverse and gender-balanced workforce actually is great for business. It's good for creativity, it leads to better results. So allow me 1 minute of marketing here. Our inclusion among the leading companies in Bloomberg's own Gender Equality Index is really important for us. We need to measure so we can make progress, because we are seeing more women in senior roles, but the very significant inequalities still to fix. And by the way, this is not just about senior women. It is about women with energy and skills that are able and should contribute at every level. So again, I'm very proud that at Santander, we are making progress. For example, we're implementing more progressive parental leave policies, retraining our branch staff in new skills to serve customers in new ways, mentoring women at every level. And of course, we're very proud about the financing of entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs in many countries across our footprint. I am very honored now to have been recently appointed as head of the European Banking Federation, and will engage in these efforts, hopefully on a broader scale across Europe, and hopefully beyond. So we do need to scale up our efforts, and the EBF's Women's Empowerment Principles, which seeks to set a model for sectoral coordination and progress, is a very important step in the right direction. So let me conclude saying again that we know that gender inequality constrains progress, that gender equality is good and will be great for business and the world. Also, let me end by saying that as we build back after COVID, we have a unique opportunity to build back better in a more sustainable and equitable way. And that to do this, we need everybody. We need the men as well as the women. We need to collaborate. We need to work together, business and governments. And it's an opportunity we must not squander. So thanks again, Peter, for asking me to be with you today. I am sure the discussions you'll have over the next few days will be very valuable and inspiring all of us to take action now. Thank you again.
Anna put in there with some of the policies that could make a real difference. Now, it's also my great pleasure to welcome the Italian MEP, Irene Tinagli, elected chair of the European Parliament's Economic and Monetary Affairs Committee in 2019. Now, Irene is a strong advocate for gender equality in the workplace and in particular in finance institutions. In her role as Econ chair, Irene has also promoted a campaign together with women leading key institutions. So I'm going to hand it over to Irene. Irene?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really want to thank you for inviting me to this event. As you said, this is a topic that is really close to my heart, and not simply because I'm a woman, but because I know the value of diversity in an organization, in society, and I know how underrepresented women still are in some sectors, especially the one that I, deal with on a daily basis, the financial sector, banking industry. Since I have been chairing the Econ Committee of the European Parliament, I have met dozens of leaders of financial institutions, also, of EU economic institutions, of candidates, and women were always a very small number. And beyond my own personal experience, it's not just based on my own experience, there are the numbers. Last year, the European Banking Authority released a report on diversity practices in financial institutions, which I found revealing, albeit shocking, I would say. About 42% of the institutions analyzed, they have not yet adopted a diversity policy. And two-thirds, about 67% of the credit institutions analyzed had executive directors of only one gender. And I let you guess which one. If you look at the smallest institutions, the numbers are even a little bit worse. But even the very large institutions are far from full parity. And then if we look at hedge funds, venture capital, private equity, here the numbers are even worse. I saw some studies from Harvard Business School saying that among senior roles in venture capital and private equity, women held just 9% and 6% respectively in this position. In hedge funds, apparently it's 11%. So this is really something that we need to change. Now, why we have this kind of situation? I think it reflects various factors. In part, it is true that it reflects women's choices when they have to decide what kind of study path to pursue. For example, I saw a survey in the US 10 years ago, only 32% of the MBA students were women. Now we are a little bit better. We are close to 40% according to this survey, but it's still, far from full parity. However, the small numbers of women we see at the top of economic and financial institutions cannot be just explained by different choices at the beginning of their career. There is something that happens from the moment women enter an organization throughout their careers. One of them was just mentioned by Ana Patricia Botín, the fact that women are penalized when they start having a family, when they have to balance their work and their family. Parenthood, it's not bared in equal ways. This is also related to the way that parental leave is structured in some countries, because it's very unbalanced and lead the women to bear most of the burden. It's not a chance, it's not out of nothing that we found much more women in part-time positions compared to men. In Europe, this number is over 3 times more women in part-time than men. So we need to think about that, and we need to act on this. And then there is one last factor. I think that there is still a clear unbalance in how women are valued, rewarded, and promoted inside many organizations. And we see that from the simple fact that we still observe a pretty relevant pay gap. So women on average earn less than their male counterpart. In Europe, on average, we are talking about 14% less per hour than a man. And we shouldn't make the mistake to think that this is just, something that pertains to some sectors, maybe low value added. That's not the case. The profession with the largest differences in hourly earnings in the EU were managers, 23% lower than men. Now, what can we do? What are we doing? In Parliament, we have voted resolutions urging the Commission to take action, to propose directives, and this is what I've been doing. Last year, we voted a resolution asking the Commission to come up with a new strategy. They did it 1 month later. We have a new strategy for the EU. 2 weeks ago, the Commission proposed a new directive. This is a very, very important one, a directive on equal pay for equal work that sets clear obligations for employers, especially the big ones, in terms of transparencies. It introduces also penalties and sanctions and gives women concrete tools to defend their rights. There have been other directives, like the one on work-life balance that provided a comprehensive package of policy guidance to modernize, for example, the nature of parental leave. And now we have many more European countries that have fathers' mandatory leave, which is an important step forward. However, we cannot solve the problem exclusively through legislation. I think we are all aware of that. We need a broader awareness, collective action. We need public debate, public opinions pressure, peer pressure. And on this regard, let me mention and appreciate the effort that you are putting, Bloomberg is putting in promoting women, also by involving companies in building your gender equality index, improving transparency, sharing best practices. This is crucial. These kind of initiatives can really help us pushing the bar higher to go where legislation sometimes cannot go, and to stimulate employers and society to be more ambitious. And this will help all of us to achieve the parity we are looking for. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Irene. And I mentioned this campaign that you've done with a lot of female or leading institutions of the European Union, and actually participants. If you're registered, you can find it under the resources section. Irene, what do you think is the biggest barrier? So is the biggest barrier attracting women to finance jobs, or is it then keeping them in jobs once they're in the industry?
Well, looking at the numbers and see how many more women are now choosing finance, economics, and business, I think the biggest problem we have now is to keep them in these positions and to help them, raising to the top. I think this is the biggest challenge that we have.
So you have a very pivotal and key role in this. What attracted you to this job? Why did you think, how do you feel you can make a difference? And what do you like most about what you're doing?
Well, for example, the directive that I just mentioned, this is an important part. I mean, there is this bias, this commonplace thinking that women do not negotiate, they don't care about equal pay. They do care about equal pay, and it affects the incentives of women to stay in a job, to put effort, to have ambitions, to look, to aim at be in a higher position. So if we manage to get this directive adopted, and to get it adopted in all the European states, I'm sure it will really help to provide incentives for women to have, and also for employers. They will start to realize that there is indeed an equal value because they will have to pay them equally. So there will be an incentive to really value them at their best. So this is one, of course, improvement in work-life balance. There was a directive in 2019. Many countries are still in the process of adopting. As I said, the nature of parental leaves is important. Anna Botín mentioned new practices in her own company. This is very, very important. It's more cultural, but it helps. It helps families to realize how important it is to share equally the burden, so women can not only put more effort in their jobs, in their occupations, but they can do that with, feeling less bad than in the past, which you always had this cultural problem. So you feel it's okay if your husband, if your partner does some of the job.
Irene, I mean, it's incredible that we're still having this conversation in 2021. Do you still have pushback when we talk about, equal pay for equal work, or even some of the paternity leave and do people actually still question that, or do they not question it, but it's just not implemented?
No, I think people are surprised that we are still observing these gaps, and people want to push. That's why I said we need to operate on many different levels. Of course, there is a legislative, side, laws that we have to pass, but there is also a cultural front on which we have to operate to increase awareness, to have society and people ask for that. Several years ago, there was this proposal of directive the Commission put forward for a gender balance in the boards of listed companies. I don't know if you remember that. Well, that proposal didn't go anywhere because the council blocked it completely. But then there was a debate and people started to ask, yes, why don't we see more women in the board? So why don't we try to push it? And many countries started on their own initiative to have these kind of requirements. And now you have countries like Italy that in just few years have improved considerably their situation. And we have, I think, about 25%, 30% women in the boards of listed companies. So it's a complex process. We have to operate at many different levels, in many different fields. And I think that there is a greater awareness now in society, and people are asking why we are still not there.
Yeah, which is the question that I get asked the most. How difficult is it to shift perception?
I mean, by example is one. When people start seeing women, it's not just talking about women at the top. When they start seeing women at the top, then they start to perceive that something is changing. And I think in the past year, with Ursula von der Leyen, Christine Lagarde, Mairead McGuinness as a commissioner for financial services, a woman for the first time, Anna Patricia Botín, I think this is a way to let people know that something is really changing. So this is a very, very important.
Irene, one of the things that Anna Botín was talking about was women having to drop out of the workforce because of the pressure of the pandemic. So either homeschooling kids or things like that. When do we have the numbers to truly understand how transitional on the worst side 2020 has been for women in finance?
Well, this is a huge debate. We've observed that in many different countries. In Italy, I think almost 90% of the jobs that were lost in the past year were women, and we need to take action. And I think that we could use the Next Generation EU funds and resources. We should keep in mind the situation of women, to use these funds to improve childcare, to improve services for women and people at work. We really need to take this seriously, very, very seriously, because the consequences of these are on the entire society, not just on women.
Thank you so much for a spirited conversation. That was Irene Tinagli, and our panel now begins shortly. Well, I'd like to invite now on the virtual stage a wonderful panel with some really key finance industry players who've featured in the 2021 Bloomberg Gender Equality Index as finance institutions who are actually trying to drive forward equality in the workplace, together with an expert of an NGO working on education in Europe. So here they are. You've seen their names on the screen already. Antoine Sia, Head of Company Engagement at BNP Paribas. Shaheen Akram, Global Head on Diversity Inclusion at ING. Maria Jansson, Head of Markets at Swedbank. Roberta Maracino, Head of Group ESG Strategy and Impact Banking UniCredit, and Salvatore Nigo, Chief Executive, Junior Achievement Europe. So thank you all for being on the panel with us. Shaheen, let me actually start off with you. When you look at some of the things that your bank has put in place, what's worked and what's worked less well?
Sure. Thank you very much, Francine. Lovely to meet everybody, and thank you for the opportunity here. So there's a number of things that ING have been working on. I joined in 2018. So let me just share with you some of the things that I think have really started to help us. So I think number one, accountability, right? So thinking about how are we going to make sure that we know where we want to kind of go and the progress we kind of want to make. We introduced something called the 70% principle. In 2018, which was started to bleed into the organisation in 2019. And what that essentially is about saying that, we want to build an organisation based on mixed teams within an inclusive setting. 70% means that no more than 70%, we aspire for no more than 70% of our teams to be made up of the same gender, no more than 70% of the same nationality, and no more than 70% of the same age group. And they are proxies to help us understand how we kind of move the needle on diversity and inclusion. And so what we do is use those measurements to track our progress through dashboards. So that is kind of big one step for any one organization to know what it's kind of going for and how it's tracking against that. And, globally, yes, we meet those measures. We meet the 70%, but the challenge is not globally. It's in countries and it's in business lines. And that is where we look to see progress. And we track and we kind of share that. So I think that's really important, number one. And number two, we have looked, like many organizations, our processes and practices, zooming in on the ones that we think are going to move the needle most. So, for example, I will say succession planning is one area that we are looking in. How can we build even more stronger, diverse pipelines? We currently have 2 women on our board, on our management board, 2 out of 7 even. Yes, that's good, but we want to make more progress. So I think, looking at our succession plans is really important for us. And the third piece that's really working for us is, the dialogue around moving any strand of diversity has to include more than that strand. So opening up the dialogue to the majority of the organization, not the whole organization, to really contribute and see what their role is in driving the change. So, things like telling stories, regular beats throughout the year, different people featured, different stories to help people connect and understand what it's like to be in the shoes of a woman on the management board. What's it like to be in the shoes of a woman that's going through the LGBT, as part of the LGBT community. So really trying to engage, and I think the previous speaker said, on many different levels.
Maria, can you point to some of the things that you're doing really well and things that maybe you wish, Swedbank were doing better?
Of course I can, and thank you. I think change starts from the top, and our CEO, Jens Henriksson, is extremely committed. He's part of a community called Nordic CEOs for a Sustainable Future, where gender equality is a key issue. And I think what we do, we have gender targets to have gender balance in all management teams. Also in all senior positions of 40-60. We didn't choose 50 because sometimes it's really hard to achieve exactly 50, but either 40-60 men or women. We also, in all senior recruitments, we always have a man and a woman candidate. And also we did something really fun actually here in markets. It's a lot of, it's really much more guys in the markets operation. And I want to increase the pace of change here. So we brought in 10 young women from university, and we were specific. We wanted women with a technical background to increase the pace of change. And we got a lot of nice feedbacks from our women that just being a group was so good. They could exchange a lot of ideas, and they could also meet after work and discuss how do you approach this and this. So there are many things you can do, both on a broader perspective in the whole bank, but also I think we must target these areas like mine that are really male-dominated and move faster.
Antoine, what are you doing, better, and what could be done better?
Well, first of all, I believe that the Bloomberg Gender Equality Index really encourages us to have ambitious gender equality objectives, and for us, it's really a kind of framework. We really use its 5 pillars. First, female leadership and talent pipeline. So I can give very obvious results. For example, when I joined the company more than 20 years ago, there was absolutely no country at BNP Paribas that was headed by a woman. None of it. And now we can say that United States, France, United Kingdom, Italy, Switzerland, Canada, Spain, India, and several other countries are headed by women. So it's an example. But more generally speaking, in terms of female leadership and talent pipelines, we really believe that it's important to have ambitious targets. And this is important to do. Women represent 50% of our emerging talents and 46% of our talents overall. We have already 1/3 of women in our executive committee, and we have set the ambition to have a proportion of women to at least 40% by 2025. So it's first point we need to have this ambitious target for female leadership and talent pipeline. Of course, second, equal pay. It's you always have to improve the situation. We know that we are not completely satisfactory, but we have done a lot of improvement, and we are now close to the targets. But we need to continue to have a global gender-based compensation review. It's absolutely essential. Third point is to have an inclusive culture. That's why we have, for example, signed a global framework agreement in 2018, which includes 14 weeks of fully paid primary parental leave in all of our countries, and recommend a minimum of 6 days of fully paid secondary parental leave. We are also aim to raise awareness about violence against women. BNP Paribas has been a member of 1 in 3 women since its launch in 2018, and we can see that this generates also a real improvement, because unfortunately it's a real problem, and the company and the work has to contribute to the solution. I mentioned the fourth pillar. It's which is essential, which is sexual harassment. We improved our procedure. We have now a very, very strong procedures for this. So we are, and finally, we are working in pro-women public coalitions such as He4She. We have improved a lot the female representation in our capital markets activities, our global market activities, and so it's an important element.
Thank you, Antoine. No one so far has told me what they could do better. So let me go to Roberta and Salvatore, and then we have a discussion of actually what's not working so well within your institution. Roberta.
Okay, so let me say that most of the initiatives that have been mentioned by my previous colleague are almost the same that we are doing also in UniCredit. But I would just add a few additional elements that, in my opinion, and in our opinion, are very important that we are integrating in our approach. So first of all, D&I, diversity and inclusion, is part of the overall ESG approach. So this means that it is considered part of purpose-driven organization and an organization like we are that sees the D&I and all the commitment on environment and social issues as part of our strategy. So this is part of our strategy, part of our values, and part of our behaviors. Particularly on D&I, there is a strong commitment on changing things, and a lot of initiatives have been already put in place. But first of all, in order to work well, like in our case, I mean, the D&I agenda should be clearly at the top, at the CEO and top management level. So which means for us, in having set clear targets, so we have targets in terms of KPIs for top manager linked to gender equality since 2017. So we have 2023 target to reach a certain percentage of senior leadership position for women, which is 30% in our case. We have also the newly elected board that will have probably 45% of the representation which are women. And in addition, let me say, setting targets means also having the executive committee members involved in promoting women. We have a program actually in UniCredit where each executive committee member, including myself, has one or two sponsorees, and we have the responsibility to let them grow and to accelerate their growth. Since the inception of the program a month and a half ago, as far as I know, at least 3 of these 27 women have already progressed to more senior roles. The second element, together with the setting the targets, the thing that we have done pretty well, but it is still something that we can improve. There is endorsing the change in mindset and in the organizational culture, which means, organizing training and development initiatives, but working toward, the hidden bias for promoting and accelerating the growth of women. But on the other side, also putting in place incentive schemes. For example, D&I and sustainability goals are part also of our MBO and long-term incentive plan of our top managers, and also acting as a role model and giving visibility to top female leaders in the organization in order to provide examples that growing and having a successful career in banking is something which is possible. And then another 2 elements. The first one is demonstrate as a bank that we can act as part of the solution, not only within the organization, but also outside the organization, providing support on the social impact financing and support to women entrepreneurs. And also, let me say, financial education, because the financial behaviors of our women clients is completely different from the financial behavior of our men clients. Women apply less for loans. The women have also, higher rejection rates when they apply for loans. And they are also at risk of financial exclusions once they get off of the work. And the final point is the measurement of the progresses, which is also part of today's discussion, because, for example, being assessed externally by some ESG rating agencies or assessors like Bloomberg Gender Equality Index is something that it is very, very relevant and important for us. We made a big progress last year, and we are running ahead of the average level of the financial sector because, we worked a lot on very specific elements and themes that have been highlighted last year. So keep the track, measure yourself, and raise further the bar for the next time.
Thank you. Salvatore, what are you seeing?
Well, I think I would comment on a few words that I heard, which is what, why, when, and who. What is a reflection of reality? Women are underrepresented in leadership roles across all levels, as well as in sectors that are paths to top positions, such as in finance. Why? The reasons, we all agree, they are not biological. The reasons are cultural, are social. So when do we really need to intervene? What we believe at JA Europe, by serving more than 4 million youth every year in 40 European countries, is that the earliest, the better. Because the differences and the gender stereotyping start at a very early age. And this is why education play a role, a key role for young women. Entrepreneurship education, which is one of our pillars, together with work readiness and financial literacy, is a proven way to improve girls' confidence in using competences that are typically viewed as traditionally obstacles to female entrepreneurship, such as financial literacy, managing uncertainty, and marshalling resources, as we just heard. In fact, the research shows that education in financial literacy and entrepreneurship has a significant bigger effect on young girls compared to boys. So the more opportunities for learning about financial literacy and entrepreneurship we can provide to young girls at school, the more women we will see in the future choosing the career in finance. But is it enough with the current educational systems and the current educational structure? We believe there is a significant importance of bringing the business closer to the schools. This is why when we serve every year over 4 million young people, we also leverage over 150,000 business volunteers that goes into the schools. And that's the collaboration of the world of finance that brings the world of finance into the classrooms. And some of those volunteers are definitely volunteers of Bloomberg, with whom we partner in more than 15 European countries, or Arrow Global, in which we have a fantastic financial literacy program, as in BNY Mellon, Citi, HSBC, NN, but also Euroclear, Euronext, Ergon Capital, MetLife, and Bank of Tokyo Mitsubishi. We are working with European Banking Federation and over 70 financial institutions across Europe to go into the schools. Leverages 150,000 business volunteers also to provide role models. And our key action is to ensure that many girls as possible have access to these programs. We've been doing this for over 100 years. Now, if you ask us to build roads and bridges, that's not our business. Our business is really to bring what is good of the private sector into the educational systems. And I think that we need more and more inspiration for the young girls to see themselves, to project themselves. I want to see to my 3-year-old daughter who is just entering into the school system, seeing herself in the clothes of a successful business leader that we have seen today in this panel, and get inspiration out of that on how she will be in more than 20 years.
That's very powerful.
From now.
Salvatore, thank you. So let's try and unpack. I'm going to ask you if you can just to keep your answers fairly short because we're running out of time. I have many questions from the audience and I have many questions myself. So given what Salvatore has just laid out, in 30 seconds, Shaheen, can you tell me at what point, so you're all involved at some level in either recruiting or hiring, at what level do women drop out? Is it at the beginning? Do you have one candidate for one candidate? Or is it when they have children? Is it before? Can you pinpoint the most crucial, like 3-4 years when the labor force becomes uneven?
So in my experience, not just at ING, but wider as well, women start to sort of change their pattern, I suppose, is when they get into the mid-management levels. So, and that isn't necessarily, people often point to childbearing age. It's not always about childbearing, and I think that's a little bit of a red herring. So I think there's many factors that women start to get exposed to, and that is where we need to kind of put some attention as to why that is happening, and that is what we are also looking at. What is taking place in our organisations? What's happening. So it's not. I really want to stress it's not just because the women start to decide all to have children that this leak starts to happen.
So could it be more pressures? But pressures of the job or more peer pressure, Maria? Do you see that kind of dropping off? Let me go to.
I mean, there could be.
Yeah. Sorry, Shaheen, and then let me go to Maria.
Okay.
Go ahead.
About market. Yeah, if I speak about markets or dealing rooms, I think it's about attracting women and change the way that we view the finance industry. I think many movies, they portray markets or dealing rooms as harsh and bold and only about numbers. I think for many women, we need to go out and tell them it's the most fun job in the world. It's you have to be good at relationships, clients, numbers, juggle many balls at the same time. I mean, it's perfect for women to work in a dealing room. I think we need to convey that message already at university and in the smaller schools. So send out women, show that it's fun, and just promote it. Also, when we recruit women, many times I need actually to go and get them. They don't apply. They think it's too dangerous and too hard, and it's totally wrong, I say. Women do this exactly the same way as men.
Yeah, Antoine, where do you see a point where women drop off, Antoine?
Yeah, I believe, for instance, I go in colleges to just explain my experience and share what we do at BNP Paribas. And once I asked to associations that work in college, what should I tell to these young people? And once the person told me, you should tell the girls that they can do all the jobs. They can go to finance, but they can also go to medicine. Any job is allowed for a girl and for a woman. And interestingly enough, when we ask after the session what the people bear in mind, the most interesting sentence of what I have said is this. The girls have in mind that all the jobs that they can do all the jobs, and it's very
right. So. But Antoine, once you hire them, so once you have this female workforce, when do they, stop working for BNP Paribas?
Sorry, I didn't catch your question.
The question is, at what point, once you have these women working for your institution, at what time, at what age is it difficult to retain talent, female talent? And then I have a lot of questions on diversity, so we'll get to that.
Honestly, it's very difficult to say that there is really an age. You can know that when you have been, of course, we train the people for 3 or 4 years initially, and there are departures at that moment. But I wouldn't say that there is a particular age, because when people have a market value, they can go out of the company at any age. So it's not. I wouldn't say that we have a very relevant drop-off age. What I know is that in the beginning, when we build our talent pipeline, we notice that at several stages we lose part of the pipeline. And at the end of over the years, we could see that we had more men at the top than in the proportion initially. So that's why we are now trying to change this, and we are trying to have a talent pipeline where we will have even more women than men, because we want to avoid deperdition. In BNP Paribas, we have 53% of women and 47% of men, and we want to have this to keep a proportion of the most equal as possible. And for this reason, we try to have a pipeline talent where the minimum of women is 50%, which means that we will now be slightly above 50% to have a gender equality under I would say, the top management.
Right. Roberta, I'm getting a lot of questions actually on diversity, why we're focusing so much on equality, and this is an equality, mainly a bit more focused on gender. But how much more do we need to do to be inclusive for all people of all walks of life, and even people that don't identify with the feminine or masculine gender?
Yeah, I believe that, said by my previous colleague, there are, various steps that we need to monitor and focus on. Also, at the recruiting level, we need to ensure that there is no, let's say, discrimination for any kind of diversity. This is true for women. This is true for any other, let's say, diversity, but also I would say competence. No, if we hire, for example, people specialized in finance, why don't we hire also people who are specialized in other, humanistic areas that can be even more interesting from a strategic point of view and looking forward point of view. So, monitoring all the steps from recruiting to development to the growth to the top. Ensure that we clearly track where are the steps where we miss some kind of diversity. So let me go back at the women example. In UniCredit, for example, at the recruiting side, we are already balanced, even recruiting more women than men. We miss some of the pipeline at the middle management level. And depending on the countries, it depends very much on the stage of the development of a family. So typically, for example, in Italy, in general, after the second child, 60% of the women don't come back to work. So this is something that should be clearly raised, because if there is no public support on this, there should be company support on this if we want to keep this kind of talents. And regarding the more general, diversity of areas, also I have to say that there are some areas that where women apply a bit less. This is true for corporate investment banking. This is true for the risk positions, for the lending positions, for example. And we have to teach them that there are plenty of opportunities there, and that there is a career track for them there. This is something which is not visible. Let me just add one more thing that we have observed, that typically women go for a specialized career, while men, have a sort of zigzag. They move from a position to another position more easily than women. So we have also to teach women that, moving and stepping into other opportunities, even if you have to reassess yourself and move outside your comfort zone, is something that they have to tackle.
Roberta,
if I can.
Yeah, and this goes back to a question, on the entitlement gap, which is basically the gap that, women maybe feel more reluctant to ask for promotions and pay rises. So are there clear incentives, Roberta, that you think should be put in place to make sure that that does not happen?
Exactly.
But there should,
can anyone pinpoint? I don't know. Yeah, go ahead, Salvatore. Is there anything concretely that can be done, on this entitlement gap?
But there is the entitlement gap, definitely. It has to be reduced and it has to be incentivized. But I will not focus just on the promotion itself. It's the full workplace around it that need to change. One thing that this pandemic has taught us is flexibility is the word. I myself, my wife, after 3 years of having our second child, exactly just went back to work 2 weeks ago. Just 2 weeks ago. And you know why this is possible? Not because her employers allow her to take a flexible approach, because my employer allowed me to get a flexible approach. So I can definitely also combine much better my personal and family life with the work that would allow my wife to pursue her career options. And I think this is what needs to be changed, because when we will get out of this pandemic, we cannot go back to normal. We should go back to better. And what we have taught here, that there are plenty of jobs that you can do it in a flexible manner, no matter your gender, then this should be incentivized, because this would definitely help to spur, promote, and allow also for women to get more opportunities.
And Salvatore, that goes actually to two questions. One is how many men are watching, because that also makes a big difference. To Shaheen, Antoine, Maria, I don't know who wants to go first, but how many men are actually asking for paternity leave or getting that support, and would that make a real difference, especially for women who go into management level? I don't know who wants to answer it first, either Maria or Shaheen. Yeah, Maria.
I would love to start. No, actually, I think we've come pretty far in the Scandinavian countries on that. We're really happy. I start to see in new generations now that people share parental leave, and that's fantastic. Like you said, that's great for the women. We have a fixed income trader right outside my room here. He's home on 6 months parental leave. I think that's great. Set role models that it's equal for men and women to be home and share. And, it's like 6 months is usually you share 6 months each. It's perfect for the children, and it's perfect for the employer and for both women and men.
I think
I have another question.
Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead, Shaheen.
No, please. What was the question that you had?
So the other question is, how do your organizations balance out meeting the diversity targets and limiting the negative effect of positive discrimination?
Sure. Okay, this is a question that comes up regularly. Does it mean that when you meet diversity targets, you somehow, I don't know, drop the standard or the qualifications that are required? That's not what diversity stands for at all. It's about looking much more broadly than you would normally when it comes to looking for talent. You still hold the same, expectations, because when you are assessing, you're assessing objectively. You're still looking for the same skills and experiences. You might be looking at it in a different package, but essentially you're looking for the same skills and experiences. You are assessing objectively. You have, a diverse set of panels that are looking across and assessing the individual's competency as they come through. And then when you make a decision, you base that on objective decision making, and you also make sure that the person that you're bringing in is going to bring value to the team, is going to enrich the team that you're bringing them in. So this is not about, meeting a target to tick a box, because unfortunately in that case, nobody actually wins, the person that you bring in or the organization. There's just too much fallout from that. And actually it's a very short fix. It's a very short term fix, and it does not help at all. So the way to keep this where it should be is objective decision making all the way through the recruitment process. And even before you start recruiting, be objective in what you're looking for and where you look, and then make sure you follow that through the process. It's not about...
Antoine, any thoughts on...
If I can. And I don't think you need to do it, because here it's just, we're not discussing just to check the box. But this is actually good for the company. There is such a talent shortage out there that you cannot bind yourself just because you're not embracing diversity in full. It is good for your company itself. So the talent shortage, by simply looking more and more where the talent is, irrespective really of looking into too much closet binding eyes, then you are definitely going to do good for society and do well for the company.
I concur with this, and it shows how much the cultural change is important. I remember a few years ago there was a guy who was almost irreplaceable. It was really the guy who was well in his job, and once I asked him, okay, is there a moment you are going to change a job? And he says, no, because I know that the CEO relies on me in this job. It is very difficult. And I just told him, but listen, you say that you are difficult to be replaced by your deputies, but did you ever think your deputies are all men? It was a few years ago. Did you ever think to have a woman to consider a woman that is maybe not your direct deputy, but that is just under, and maybe she had a slower career for one reason or some reason, but at the end of the day, you know that she could replace you at one point. And he looked at me and he says, "Oh, it's fantastic, you know. What you are telling me is really an eye opener for me. It's incredible." And I'm glad to announce that the person who has taken his position since is a woman, and obviously. At one moment, but now we are much better than this. But at one moment, introducing the women in the game has been a fantastic game changer for the company. And now we are almost gender equal in the senior management position. So we were, and our company is very successful. So I suppose that having much more women has been really part of being so successful.
That's quite a story. I didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. We're out of time, but actually in 20 seconds each, if you could each maybe say, in 20 seconds, your pitch to a new chief executive that you have or someone else chief executive and what they could do more to advance diversity at all levels. Maria.
Encourage people to dare to fail. You have to dare to jump on new opportunities, to take chances, otherwise you won't succeed. That goes for both women and men. And I want more women to dare to fail, learn and move on, and move up.
Roberta.
I would say, to steer the current plan, accelerate on reducing the pay gap, and focus on financing the inclusion. Focus on financing and make an increasing effort on financing the inclusion, because we have not flagged this point. We have just focused on our internal environment, but we as banks can do much more in terms of our impact that we can have with our social financing, in financing women and financing, diverse people who are suffering of financial inclusion. So focus more on this.
Salvatore?
For what would you like to be remembered for? That's my question that I would pose to the leaders of different companies. Would you like to be remembered, if you are a woman, as to be a role model and inspiring others to follow your path? If you are a man, for supporting and embracing diversity across your organization and inspiring the next generations? What would you like to be remembered for?
Good one. Antoine, 20 seconds.
So I would say the same regarding inclusion and regarding helping the women. We have dedicated an envelope for women entrepreneurs, and since we didn't reach the objective, the banks has not done the objective. And I really believe that having the culture of using our power of financial institution to empower women from very modern startups than the work we do with agriculture in remote countries, in emerging countries. That's really empowering the women, and being an institution that develops its services in empowering the woman is something which is essential for us, and we believe that if we want to create a real gender equal culture, it's absolutely important to have the financial services, women, empowering the women in our culture as a bank.
Shaheen, your 20-second pitch to the new chief executive.
Sure, thank you. So in 20 seconds even, I would say that, continue to inspire the people around you, the men and the women that actually, and our people from other communities as well, inspire them to follow your lead, because you will lead the way in terms of how how people show up and what the expectation is, and you ask people to demonstrate what they're doing and the impact that is making as a regular beat through the organization, not the beginning of the year or at the end of the year, but on a regular basis. Let's show the actions that we're taking and the impact that we're making. That's what I would say.
Thank you so much for a fantastic panel. Next time we have to do it for 3 hours because I've had so many questions. So thank you so much for the audience that sent those questions in. I'm sorry we didn't have time to get through all of them. Antoine, Shaheen, Maria, Roberta, and Salvatore there. Now, thank you so much for everyone listening from at home or in the office or wherever you may be. Of course, our Bloomberg Equality Summit continues tomorrow throughout the day. You can register using our link on our website. And of course, everyone have a happy International Women's Month.